Hello, everyone. Madison Cawthorn with the
Nope,
Warrior Poet Society.
I'm actually in charge. I'm in charge. This is my video.
Is this is the Warrior Poet's chair?
Yeah. And you're in it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is my show.
I feel like you
just kind of rolled into my life.
Is that like a wheelchair joke?
I mean, there's a lot of jokes that could be made. Like, you really stand up for America.
I'm out of here. How do you work this thing? I'm missing my mark, but I'm going now. Jerk. To me, as an onlooker, I hate politics. I really dislike politicians. You're okay-ish, right?
That's a high bar. I'm okay.
That's a high bar. Like, man, well, it's just because I feel like it's just such rampant corruption.
Yes.
And I feel like every time a politician speaks, it's all these like empty platitudes, like it's a competition. How corrupt is it?
Number one, I think that it has to do with the fallen nature of man. A lot of these people are all big fish in a little pond where they come from. They're all very important. They now have the name honorable in front of them. They've got bulletproof glass, velvet robes, security everywhere they go. And then they get to Washington, and they're no longer the big fish in a little pond. They're just a fish in a very large ocean, and everyone's a big fish.
A few years ago, my wife and I started watching a disgusting show, and we ended up giving up on it after a while, but it was an interesting study for us. It was revealing. It was a show called House of Cards.
I'm going to turn my hat around for this.
Are you familiar with House of Cards?
It's about to get serious. Yes, I am.
With Kevin Spacey, and I forget who else was in it. But anyway,
really well done show.
Very well done show.
Very well done show.
But it was so dirty, and it was about this congressman who was Kevin Spacey, who was, I think it was minority or majority whip.
Yep.
What was it? Yeah. And so anyway, very, very powerful guy. And it was just kind of like his secret life of all this corruption and power and money and perversion, and it was just dirty. How much, in your opinion, because you've been behind the veil, is this a fictitious show, or is this more closer to like a documentary? Is it that bad?
So I heard a former president that we had in the 90s was asked the question about this. And he gave an answer that I thought was so true. And he said, the only thing that's not accurate in that show is that you could never get a piece of legislation about education passed that quickly.
And everything else is good?
Aside from that, I mean, the sexual perversion that goes on in Washington, I mean, being kind of a young guy in Washington, with the average age is probably 60 or 70, and I look at all these people, a lot of them that I've looked up to through my life. I've always paid attention to politics, guys that, then all of a sudden you get invited to, like, well, hey, we're going to have kind of a sexual get-together at one of our homes. You should come. And I'm like, what did you just ask me to come to? Yeah. And then you realize they're asking you to come to an orgy. Yeah. Or the fact that, there's some of the people that are leading on the movement to try and remove, addiction in our country. And then you watch them do, a key bump of cocaine right in front of you. And it's like, wow, this is wild. And then there's also kind of the whole espionage aspect of what goes on in Washington of, so many people trade in secrets, and there's a currency to secrets. And so it's wild. And then, there's members of the media, the journalists, who kind of will keep nasty stories about you or about other people on a shelf. And then if you're about to kind of speak out against something they don't want you to, they'll come out and say, well, we're about to drop the story of when, 17 years ago you did X, Y, and Z. And you don't want us to drop that story, do you? So we're going to bully you back into this position.
Practically, let's say that all of a sudden I was going into office. By the way, I have no political aspirations, zero. And people are always like, John, run for office. It'll be, nope, absolutely not. I'd like to support people that have that calling. I have no desire to do that. But let's, as a little thought experiment, I am just elected, Congress, Senate, whatever, and I get in there and I go through my orientation and I have my good values and stuff, and I stand for something like many other before. How does that slippery slope actually get in front of me? Our current president, he's been in public service for 50 years at a certain salary, which is kind of like, it's good, but it's not great. You can't become a lavish multi-millionaire with all these different houses, and the math doesn't work. Like the battery example, that was a real example,
That's
right?
a real example. Yeah. No, right before we announced we were going to add about 700,000 electric vehicles to our federal fleet, I noticed, because if you go to, I think it's CEOwatchlist.org, you can see the trades that publicly traded companies, CEOs, and anybody in the C-suite are making, or what all trades members of Congress are making. And so we all kind of monitor that just to see what's going on. And I noticed a lot of people in the majority party were buying stocks that had to do with some kind of battery, some kind of technology for electric vehicles. And then wouldn't you know it, about a month or two later, it was then announced we're adding 700,000 electric vehicles to the fleet, and then all those stock prices just jumped. Whether you're investing in lithium mines, whether you're investing in the people who actually manufacture batteries, whether you're investing directly into companies that make electric cars. And so that's a way people can make money, is through this kind of version of insider trading that people can do. But we are limited on our ability to have any kind of earned income. You can have passive income, but you can't have any earned income. And so you can't sit on a board and get a salary for it or anything like that. But what you can do is you can have your spouse put as chairman of this company. You can have your spouse saying that she's going to be, or he or she is going to be a consultant to this firm. And next thing you know, they're getting a paycheck for really not doing anything.
Could your son?
Your son? Oh, yeah.
See what you did there?
But when you first get to Washington, John Lovell just got elected, and don't run for Congress. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to help people so much, and to be able to cut through bureaucratic red tape that takes people years to get through and bring life-saving care to these people. It's incredible. But Washington, D.C. is a pit of vipers, and I am there just for a quick purpose. Most of the people that get elected is the best job they'll ever have. That's why they never want to lose it. I think this is probably, aside from the honor of getting to serve my constituents, working in Washington is like the worst job in the world. I could be at the mountains of western North Carolina. I never want to go that close to the Mason-Dixon line in my entire life.
Yeah.
But so anyways, you get elected, hypothetically. Once you get to Washington, freshman orientation is very enlightening. You learn a lot of the procedures, but it's also made to be very, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but obsequious. It's difficult to understand. You get told information, but it's not explained to you in a way where you understand exactly what needs to happen. And so therefore, you start relying heavily on your leadership, the people who are elected, whether it's the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader, whoever it is. We have a pretty good leadership team in Washington right now for my side of the aisle. But then you have to heavily rely on people who have been there for a lot of years, or people who are elected to leadership in Washington. And this then starts to consolidate power within the leadership, because instead of having, you need 218 members to vote for this, well, this one member might control 70 votes. And so then they can really throw their weight around, because not only now they're not just representing 700,000 people, we're talking 7 million, we're talking 70 million. And so the way that Washington works, the way that you start to get bought, the way that you start to lose the power over your vote, is that you start asking leadership, well, hey, what should I do in this situation? I don't really understand what this bill is doing. Can you walk me through this? And then all of a sudden they will tell you, oh, well, yeah, you just want to vote for this. And then your voting record starts going down this trail that you don't no longer have popular support of the people to support your campaigns. And so then you're starting having to rely on these special interest groups, these super PACs, and these organizations who want to see their legislation passed, not necessarily because it has to do with your district, but because it helps their business. And so these people are called lobbyists. Now, I'm very fortunate in my position to where, I get, probably $5 from 500,000 people a year, versus most people who have to rely on that $7,000 or $70,000 check from one individual person. Yeah. And so if I have a normal American who gives me $5 because they believe in something I'm saying and what I'm standing for, they're not going to feel like they have the gumption to show up and say, I need you to do this really backwater vote for me because I gave you $5.